Welcome to CEO Zones. Today I'm honored to have Major General John Gronski, retired from the U.S. Army, with us. And John and I are both from Pennsylvania, so we might have some backwoods type of discussion because we both like the countryside. But in any event, John served our country, and his wife Bertie and their whole family. Thank you for your service for over 40 years. And to some people, Major General, I'll just say that means you're a two-star general, because not everybody might put that together. So not just a general, but a two-star general. Thank you so much, John, to you and Bertie. You're also a leadership CEO. You have Leader Grove, where you do leadership training. You're an author of 3 books, and I had the pleasure of receiving from you a couple weeks ago at breakfast your newest book, and you signed it for me, and it's a wonderful, quick way to sharpen leadership skills, even for old folks like me who need to be reminded of key principles, which I hopefully will get into that discussion. And you grew up in Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, in the family business. And then in 1983, one of the great things you did with your 15-month-old son, which I've never met Bertie, but I want to someday, because I want to know how you could convince a wife and a 15-month-old to bicycle from Washington State to Pennsylvania on a bicycle, pulling your 15-month-old son, and I assume she was on a separate bicycle based on pictures I've seen. So with that, anything that I left out that you would like to add? I know 2005, 2006 comes to mind, but what would you like to add to your bio for the people that are CEOs looking for keynote speakers?
The only thing I'd like to add, Bill, is I am blessed to have you as a friend, and I really appreciate your friendship.
Well, thank you. Wonderful. So I'm going to ask you some questions. And I have never met a general yet. Actually, I've never met a colonel or above yet in my life, which I know a few, that aren't really good on their feet. And I can tell you're standing rip-roaring ready to go. So my first question is, how many one-arm push-ups can you do while you're in a suit after you've just finished a keynote speaking engagement?
Yeah, I did a commencement speech at Penn State Great Valley, which is a Penn State campus which focuses on professional degrees, master's level degrees, and spoke there in June, and the Nittany Lion was there. Now this was before my speech, and the lion was doing some one-arm push-ups, so I jumped down and I did 10 one-arms with the Nittany Lion, and it was a lot of fun.
That did make big news in Pennsylvania. So you've had I just can't even put it together. It's tremendous life experiences. And I know that the word purpose means something extremely important to you. So how does your life journey and the word purpose kind of come together?
Yeah, I really think it's important for everyone, everybody to me is a leader, first of all. And I think it's real important that people identify their purpose, because by identifying your purpose, it keeps you motivated, it keeps you inspired. It basically sets a path for you when you understand your purpose. And by the way, I struggled with my purpose when I left the Army after 40 years of service. My last tour was at U.S. Army Europe in Germany, and I had a team around me, and really had an opportunity to visit 40 different countries on business, many of them NATO countries or other partners of ours over there in Europe. And I get back home to Pennsylvania, and suddenly I don't have a team around me. I really don't have the focus that I had while I was in the military. And so I determined, the thing that got me remotivated, kind of re-inspired, reinvigorated, is I determined that my purpose was to help leaders who want to improve become better leaders. And once I arrived at that purpose, I began doing leadership training, leadership workshops, keynotes that are focused on leadership, and it really has changed my life after my transition out of the military.
Okay. And then I kind of touched on fitness, but your definition of fitness, every CEO should try to learn from your definition of fitness, because it's not just about where I've seen you on YouTube doing pull-ups in the garage and hanging off of crazy things, bicycling, hiking, one-arm push-ups, but what does fitness mean to John?
Yeah, I talk to people a lot about the need to stay fit, and the way I define fitness is there's four elements to it. Of course, it's physical fitness, and I think physical fitness is extremely important because it affects all other areas. Actually, all these areas I'm going to talk about all come together. It's kind of like the solar plexus in our body. But there's physical fitness, there's mental fitness, there's emotional fitness, and spiritual fitness. And all of those elements come together to really help us, I believe, be servant leaders and help us give back to others and help us stay, again, just in the right mental and emotional mindset where we could actually thrive rather than survive.
Thanks. Because I know that when I was reading your second book, Steve Bowen, who you know very well, the co-author of Becoming Invaluable, he always had those same words as fitness, and we were partners a couple decades, and I might not be the guy that works out every day. My idea of working out is taking a UTV through the woods or running the chainsaw, but it is not daily exercise. So we constantly battled about that, and I think you're going to be the friend that wears me down and starts to get me to do something daily.
Well, Bill, if I could chip in with one other thing. I like to talk a lot about resilience, about people being able to be resilient people. And I don't think resiliency happens on its own. And that really factors into these areas of fitness that I talked about. Because I think in order to be a resilient person, in order to be able to overcome adversity or overcome challenges, when we find those things in our life, we've got to work on those levels of fitness. Because I don't believe resiliency happens on its own. I don't think people naturally are able to overcome challenges in a successful way unless they prepare to overcome those challenges and prepare to be resilient by really focusing on those four areas of fitness.
Okay. So in your second book, Iron Sharpened Leadership, one of the chapters, the name just, I don't think we had met yet, and I was breezing it to make sure what was I going to read. I hadn't started to read it yet. And the chapter was titled, and I'm going to read my note here a second, Do Not Treat Everyone Equally. And I'm considered a tree hugger here in Pennsylvania, that type of thing. So can you expand on that? Because as I read the chapter, I learned, and I would like everybody to kind of have the opportunity to learn from you.
Yeah, I talk about that concept often when I conduct my leadership workshops. And sometimes it surprises people when I have an audience of leaders sitting there and I say, hey, as you just said, don't treat everybody equally. And a lot of people, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is that the people that we lead, our employees, our followers, not everyone is a high performer. Some people are mediocre, some people are even less than mediocre. And I think as leaders, we have to be able to connect with our people, understand what makes our people tick, and realize that the people who are high performers, the people who go above and beyond, they deserve, let's say, special consideration above and beyond the mediocre or the less than mediocre performers. And we have to take that into consideration. Now, the caveat to that is we do need to treat everybody fairly. So treating people fairly means, treat everybody fairly. It doesn't matter on their nationality, on their race, on their religion. We've got to treat people fairly based on anything like that. But again, treating people equally is not something we have to do. We have to understand who the high performers are and really give them, I think, special consideration above and beyond those who are not high performers.
I'm going to come back to something related to that because your purpose is leaders, developing leaders, and that whole genre. But I'll come back to that.
And one other thing on that, Bill, think about this. If you treat everybody equally, whether they're high performers, mediocre, or less than mediocre people, the high performers are going to get a little bit demotivated. They're going to be thinking, why do I have to be a high performer? Why do I have to go above and beyond if really these people who are mediocre or less than that are being treated by my leader exactly the same way I am. I think it's demotivating for those high performers when they see that they're not being given special consideration in some areas.
I like it. I wished I would have done it earlier in life. I like it. So both of us have worked with a lot of CEOs and a lot of corporations, and I'll say 99.9% of them have core values. But one of my personal bents is, does the person's core values align to the corporate core values before they start their job, and especially as the CEO? So do you have personal core values, and how do they align to your purpose, and how do you as an individual see yourself lining up or lead or grow your organization?
You know, Bill, about 40 years ago, I was at a dinner, and there was a CEO speaking, and she was speaking about her core values and how her core values really lent to the success that she had in her personal life and her business life. As I'm driving home from that dinner, I was thinking, wow, that was an inspiring talk. And then I thought to myself, if somebody asked me what my core values were, would I be able to answer them? And I thought to myself, well, sure, I have values, but I haven't thought long and hard enough about what are my 3 to 5 to maybe max 7 values that I'm really going to stand firm on in thick and thin. So I went on an introspective journey after that. It probably took me several months to really think long and hard about what were my core values. And I came up with the following ones: service, integrity, respect, positive energy, and those are my core values. And I live by those in good times and in bad. And it helps keep me focused. And I would say that it's real important, exactly what you mentioned. If I'm a person looking to work for a company, I want to make sure that my own personal core values are aligned with the corporate values of the company I plan on working for. But the thing is, you know, when I conduct these leadership workshops, I ask people all the time if they have identified their personal core values. And I will say it's probably at a 20 or 30% level. So only 20 to 30% of the people that I talk to in leadership positions ever really thought long and hard enough about what are their core values? What are they really going to live by in good times and in bad? And I would encourage anybody listening to this program, for sure, if you haven't identified your core values, please do that, because I think it's extremely important.
And I'll add on to that for all the audience. If you haven't done that, email me, because I'd like to talk to you. There's ways we can drive results differently in your organization. I know a guy. So then one of the other concepts, by the way, last night I did my research a couple weeks ago, then I left it alone, then I came back to study you. And last night I tried to add up how many podcasts you've been the guest of. And it just kept scrolling and scrolling. And I got to 38, and there was still many, many more. Do you have any idea how many times you've been a guest over
well over 50 times.
Yeah, I think so.
And, I really enjoy it because I'm able to get my message out there. And really, it's just fulfilling to talk to people like yourself, because most podcast hosts are good leaders in their own right, excellent leaders in their own right. And it's just really enjoyable to have conversations with people like you about an idea that's so dear to me, and that's leadership.
So that kind of got me to where the next thing, and I apologize to you, the audience probably doesn't know this, but all 3 of your books I've already hit somehow, some way. But one of the things was relationship capital. Give us that, because to me that is one of the things that I didn't realize that I value so high until I read it in black and white from you, and I went, oh yeah, yeah. So could you give us your version of that, please?
Yeah, I like to say relationships are the currency of the 21st century. I don't think there's anything more valuable than the relationships we have with other people, and we could build a business based on our relationship. I will tell you, throughout my career, the different military assignments I've had, or the different civilian opportunities I've had, I would say 9 out of 10 were a result of relationships that I was able to cultivate. And so that's why it's so important to, to network with people, to really try to serve people, and to serve people in a way where you don't expect anything in return. I think that's the important thing. When you try to help somebody out, and don't be transactional about it, don't expect anything to come back to you in return. Just so much goodness happens from that. So yeah, I think relationships are really the currency that really matters to us the most.
Right. In your newest book, the one that I received from you a couple weeks ago when we were together, Leadership Sharpeners, which is a great title because there's just quotes in there that you've read. Anybody that's studied leadership for 30, 40 years, there's quotes in there and you go, oh, yeah. And now you've put them all in one, very easy to carry, very easy to have with you, very easy, I'll call it a memory jogger type situation. But one of the quotes in there was, teams don't rise to the occasion, they perform at the level of their training.
Yes.
And I know in the Army, having been in the Air Force and the Army, or I guess I should say the Army and then the Air Force, training. I mean, you knew how to make your bed because you were trained on how to do that. You knew how to do all the basic necessities, what I'll call life skills, because everyone was trained how to do it the same way. So you knew what good was, and you knew what perfect was, and you knew how to get the gap closed. But in your quote, how does that relate to CEOs in businesses and organizations, nonprofits? How do you bring that together for that civilian, if you will?
Yeah, well, I talked about individual resiliency before, and I think there's also such a thing as team resiliency or organizational resiliency. Mm-hmm. Organizations that CEOs are in charge of have to be resilient organizations to weather storms, such as geopolitical issues, economic issues, market changes, things that change with technology, and you've got to be able to adapt to it. And that again, just like individual resiliency, doesn't occur by accident. So you've got to train your teams to be able to overcome challenges when they arise. And again, most of these challenges are unexpected. I'll tell you, this really hit home, not only from my time in the military, and especially my time commanding a brigade in combat in Ramadi, Iraq. Also, the episode of Apollo 13, and Gene Kranz, who was the mission control leader. I was reading a book by Michael Useem, who was a professor at Wharton, and in that book, he explained how Gene Kranz and his team were able to successfully get those astronauts back to Earth during that Apollo 13 episode, because Gene trained his team years ahead of time on how to adapt to changing situations and how to respond to unexpected challenges. So think about it. If Gene didn't train his team years ahead of time before that Apollo 13 episode, who knows what would have happened? And that really hit home to me about how important it is for leaders to train their teams to be able to respond to difficult situations. Obviously, I saw that in the military. I certainly realized that unless a unit was well trained, when they got into a combat situation, a life and death situation, they were not going to be successful. So training is everything in the military, and I do believe that training is everything in the business world as well. And I think more CEOs have to think about that. More CEOs have to think about, how could I train my team to adapt to challenging situations? Ways to do that: during a steady state type of operation in a company, get your team together and create scenarios where they have to respond quickly and make quick decisions to really terrible, tragic situations that are real world and may happen within a business environment. I think a perfect example, 1982, Johnson & Johnson, the CEO of J&J that time, James Burke, and how he was able to respond to the Tylenol crisis. When 7 people in the Chicago area died from Tylenol that was laced with cyanide. He and his leadership team performed very magnificently during that crisis. And Tylenol, who a lot of business analysts thought the name was gone, the name would never be revived again after that crisis, regained 80% of its market share 3 months after that crisis because the team performed so well. So CEOs need to consider that.
Thank you. Because lots of times I know some CEOs who are reluctant to bring in flag officers, et cetera, because they don't see how it matches up. Well, their world, everybody's a volunteer. Well, the volunteer was a volunteer army the last 30 some years at least. So all of those things kind of come together. In your newest book, Leadership Sharpeners, one of the, and I might have my numbers wrong, but 15,000 soldiers were under your command. And you said, what do you look for in a leader in your book? And I think there were I'm cheating now. Call it like it is, just in case I forget. Prudent risk taking, speaking truth to power, accountability and ownership, developing future leaders. How can you really maybe give us a mini training session here? Because I could see where other CEOs, they're building out their teams, they're global, they're hybrid, they're multiple facilities, all those things, remote, all those things. You've commanded 15,000 people that are scattered and very wide. Some are right in the same room and some are countries away. How do you bring all that together for a CEO if you were working with a company?
Yeah, I think having a shared vision is extremely important. I mean, when you think about one of the key responsibilities of a leader, it's to drive change. Leaders should not stand for the status quo. Leaders need to be looking forward, thinking about how they could improve the organization, how they could put forth a fulfilling vision of the future to get their people, no matter how many people you're leading, kind of mobilized to march toward that vision you have of the future. And I think that's one of the keys. And then cultivating trust is also an important thing. I think trust is kind of the lifeblood, just like the blood flows through our veins to keep us alive. Trust is really the lifeblood of any organization. And there's basically some simple things leaders could do to cultivate trust in their organization. First of all, leaders have to trust others first. I think a leader taking over a new team or a new organization, the worst thing a leader could do is come in and say to the people, I don't trust you until you prove that you could trust, or until you prove that you're trustworthy. I think that's a wrong statement. Leaders must treat other people first, because think of it this way. If you ever had a boss or a leader who doesn't trust you, were you able to trust that boss or leader? And the answer probably is no. So leaders have to assume risk by trusting others first. Leaders have to be able to create that vision that I talked about. Leaders must lead by example. So whatever standards you expect your people to follow, you as the leader have to follow those exact same things. And so anyway, those are some of the things a leader must do to cultivate trust. And then absolutely, as a leader, just show that you care about the people you lead. And ways to do that, I think some of the best ways to do that, of course, one is getting to know your people, finding them doing something right, and celebrating that behavior that when you see them doing something right. But really, I think one of the best ways a CEO or a leader of any organization could show people that they care about them is by providing those people the resources they need so they could do their job more effectively, and also by removing obstacles from the path of your employees and followers so they could do their job more effectively. As an employee, if I have a boss that's going to do those things for me, certainly I'm going to trust that leader, I'm going to trust that boss, and I'm going to do everything I could to make the organization successful.
Right. I might put it in the wrong bucket for your book, but when I think about prudent risk taking, you get into the discussion of how much is too slow when you're making a decision. What's the right amount of information? Could you explain that to the audience?
It's really based on something Colin Powell said and wrote about. And he had what he called the 40-70 rule. And he said, leaders must make decisions with imperfect information. And I think any CEO or leader would agree that whenever we make a decision, we're never going to have 100% of the information. So Colin Powell had this 40-70 rule where he said if a leader makes a decision with less than 70% of the information available, they're probably just guessing. They're probably just shooting from the hip. So you got to try to seek to get a little bit more information than 40% of the information. However, if a leader waits until they have more than 70% of the information, they probably just missed an opportunity because they waited too long. So really that sweet spot when making a decision is between 40 to 70% of that information. And that leads into another concept, Bill, when we're talking about decision making called tactical patience.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you don't have enough information, you need to let the situation develop a little bit, get a little bit more information and insight, and demonstrate that tactical patience before you go just shooting from the hip or guessing. And really that really all encompasses Powell's 40-70 rule when making decisions. And I believe in that. And I've used that rule.
Okay. So anything that you would like to share just off the cuff with a CEO who would be watching this video or a business owner that you believe you would be able to help them with?
One thing I've seen in the different civilian organizations that I've conducted leadership workshops for or I've conducted consulting for is, and this is where it's a little bit different than the Army. In the Army, we train our soldiers before they're put into that next level of leadership. We train them on leadership skills before they go into that next level of leadership. I've seen in most civilian organizations, people are placed in leadership positions without the requisite leadership training. And I don't know why that is. People are put in leadership positions and there's some type of assumption that they're just going to rise to the occasion and be an outstanding leader, even though they're going up to the next level without the training. I would just encourage CEOs to consider having leadership training available to their people before they go to the next level in that leadership journey that they're taking. Because without the proper training, people are actually going to be OJT, on-the-job training when it comes to leadership, and that could cause quite a bit of problems and angst and frustration in an organization.
So you just wrote your third book. Is there a fourth one in your mind? Is there another platform? What might be next for John? What's next?
Yeah, there could be a fourth book. What I would like to do is put together almost like a fictional story that has a leadership element to it. I think I would like to write something like that. I don't have anything kind of on the drawing board right now, but I continue to think about that. There could be another leadership book out there, but the only reason I would write another book is if I felt there was a message aching to get outside of me on the paper. And I do think that's good advice. For anybody who wants to be an author, I don't think you should necessarily write based on what you think people want to hear. I think you need to write based on the message you want to communicate. And some people are going to love that message. Some people aren't going to love the message. That's okay. But I think you have to write internally for yourself rather than externally for others.
Okay. My next question is another trick question, John. I know you're up to it. When are we going to have another bowl of Pennsylvania baked oatmeal together?
Well, I will tell you this. Right now I'm in Florida. I really reside in Florida. Left Pennsylvania recently, but I don't consider myself living in Florida full time. For sure, 4 months out of every year, I'm either going to be up in Pennsylvania we're traveling somewhere, either to another part of the United States or perhaps another part of the world. As a matter of fact, next August, my wife and I are going to be in the mountains in Austria, where we're going to be hiking for about a month. The following summer, I do plan on hiking El Camino in Spain, which is the path of St. James, which will probably be about a 5-week endeavor. But I'm going to be spending quite a few months in Pennsylvania every year. And when I get back up there, you're going to be probably the first phone call I'm going to make, Bill, to let you know I'm back in PA, and I would be looking forward to getting together and having another bowl of oatmeal with you.
And when you use, I asked you this months ago, when you say hike, you mean hike. You're not out for a little walk. You're out in the going up, going down, in and around of trees, animals, whatever it might be. You're hiking.
I love that. Yeah, I really love to hike. I also still bicycle quite a bit. And so cycling, hiking in the woods, I just love that. I love to be out in nature. That's one of the reasons we're down in Florida, because I could spend, I'm not really a snow person. So in the winters in Pennsylvania, I didn't get out there that much because I really don't enjoy skiing any longer. I used to. And this just offers me the opportunity, living in Florida, especially in the winter, to stay out in the sunshine and enjoying the outdoors many more months than I would have in Pennsylvania.
So Meet the Speaker series is about getting keynote speaking, leadership training for you. I make the assumption that johngronski.com is where we would go to find out more about you. Is that the right website?
That'd be the best source. Go to johngronski.com. There, I have the Leader Grove store there for anybody who wants to purchase a copy of one of my books, and I always sign those books when somebody buys a copy on my website. I've got a lot of free leadership development material there. I've got a lot of blogs that I've posted. I have YouTube videos. As you mentioned, I put links to all of my podcasts on the website. Yeah. So a lot of free leadership development material on my website, and I would just invite everyone to please visit.
Okay. And I'd say you have a pretty good LinkedIn profile as well, but it might be just as easy to go to johngronski.com.
Yeah, or LinkedIn. That works as well.
Or LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being our guest, and thank you so much for being my friend, quite frankly. You're what I would call one of my after-retirement friends, and I didn't have a lot of friends for decades because I was never in the same place longer than a few hours, it seemed. But at the same, or maybe I'm just not friendly. But you came into my life right as I was retiring, and really appreciate your friendship. Thank you so much.
I want to say this, Bill. What you're doing with CEO Zones is so important to CEOs and other business leaders. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking that project on. And I go to CEO Zones all the time. I gain a lot of insight from what you put together. So thank you for doing that. And
thank you.
It was great to talk to you. And this time went by quick.
It sure did. But I know that CEOs have the attention span of a gnat. So probably which is why I mixed up some of the things. And we'll probably call it a day right here, or they will look at the time of the total video and go, oh, I don't have time for that. Well, they do, because they could have been learning every couple minutes if they were paying attention. But thank you, John. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Take care.